The rise of the classical Greek world brought with it new ideas about moira, fate. Fate was no longer viewed as random or arbitrary. Instead, Greeks increasingly believed that fate operated according to rules, and that the gods intervened only to punish those who violated those rules. This raised an important question. What are the rules? Greeks believed that the polis was the ideal form of government, and that its laws and customs provided the best guidelines for human behavior. Yet these civic rules did not explain everything. Some aspects of life remained uncertain or morally complex. That is where playwrights and writers entered the scene. Through drama, poetry, and philosophy, they explored the deeper rules governing the human condition. Almost all classical-era Greek writers pursued this goal, but none more powerfully than the tragic playwrights of 5th century Athens. Tragedy, written largely in the 400s BCE, became the dominant literary form for examining fate, justice, human limitations, and the consequences of human actions. Tragic plays were performed during major religious festivals in Athens. They were financed and supervised by the state and were intended as a kind of civic education. Through their work, playwrights helped citizens understand how fate operated, what actions led to disaster, and what moral truths governed human life. Although they drew their plots from myth, playwrights freely reshaped these stories in order to explore particular themes or present their own viewpoints. The earliest tragedians, Aeschylus and Sophocles, held views that most Athenians shared. Their plays followed a recognizable moral pattern. 1. The main character is a heroic figure from myth. 2. The hero forgets the limits imposed on human beings. 3. He commits hubris, an act of arrogance or overstepping. 4. His actions violate the moral order, bringing punishment upon himself and often upon others. A classic example is Sophocles' Oedipus Rex. Oedipus flees his home in an attempt to escape a prophecy that he will kill his father and marry his mother. Unaware that he is adopted, he unknowingly sets the prophecy in motion. He kills his biological father in a quarrel and later marries his biological mother after solving the riddle of the Sphinx. His crime brings not only his own ruin, but also plague and suffering upon his city. Modern audiences often feel that Oedipus's fate is unfair. He did not intend to do wrong. But the Greek concept of sin differed from ours. For the Greeks, hubris meant attempting something humans are not permitted to do. One such impossibility is escaping your fate. Oedipus believed he could outsmart destiny. His hubris lay not in murder or incest, he did not know he was guilty, but in believing he could outwit the divine order. In the end, he blinds himself because he cannot bear to look upon the truth he has uncovered. Yet he is not merely a passive victim of fate. By acting, he brings his fate into being. A modern twist to the story is the fall of Darth Vader. Does Anakin Skywalker turn to the dark side because he is evil? No. He does so to prevent his wife from dying. The tragic twist is that his actions actually cause what he is so desperately trying to prevent. By the late 5th century BCE, the tragedian Euripides challenged many of the assumptions upheld by earlier playwrights. He lived during the Athenian Empire and the Peloponnesian War, a time when Athens often acted unwisely and inflicted great suffering on others. It became harder to believe that a democratic polis always made correct or moral decisions. Euripides saw war bringing chaos, death, and destruction to innocent and guilty alike. For him, human suffering was not always logical, just, or divinely mandated. Rather than blaming fate or the gods, he suggested that human passions, anger, jealousy, desire, were the true causes of tragedy. His play Medea illustrates this shift. In this story, Medea becomes violently jealous when her husband leaves her for another woman. For revenge, she murders the new bride, her father, and shockingly, her own children. Yet the gods allow her to escape. Euripides implies that not all human sins are punished, not all punishments are just, and not all wrongful actions are truly sins in a cosmic sense. These ideas were deeply controversial. Many Athenians considered Euripides to be immoral, irreligious, or dangerous. By the late 400s, writers and intellectuals were beginning to express ideas far more skeptical and critical than the average citizen could accept. Among these thinkers were the sophists and a man who would become one of the most influential philosophers in history, Socrates.